You're listening to People Think About It. Delve into the world of relationships, business, and politics with hosts Lamar Clark, Dorshell Clark, and Dominique Hagler on People Think About It, where thought-provoking discussions abound.
Hey, we want to welcome you to People Think About It today. Our subject is going to be about sort of like some understanding the difference in mixed, biracial children and being raised by biracial families and how the outlook looks to you. We want to thank our guest Andrew today for coming in. Andrew's a father of biracial children, and he's going to speak a little bit on it to give us a little viewpoint how it was for him raising his kids in today's society. And we just want to welcome Andrew, and let's start off our conversation. So, like I said, Andrew, you're a single parent with children, and I know your children. Right. I've been around them, seen them grow up, and just being in that situation. How do you think society looks at it? Not so much from your perspective, but how society look at it when you're dealing with raising biracial children.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because if you look at it through my eyes, I would say that I don't see a difference. They're my children. People haven't came up to me, haven't given me any looks or anything. I'm cognizant of the fact that we're in the South, so I do understand that fact. But as we were discussing before, my background is a little different and unique, where I grew up in a very diverse family, where, black, white, my step-grandmother is Filipino, so that means my dad's mom married someone else Filipino. There's all cultures in my family, so for me, coming from Virginia, the North, it wasn't anything weird about it. It wasn't anything different. So, that kind of is my perspective on it. I do understand that it's taboo to some people, especially in the South. So, I've heard of people have issues, but overall, I don't see a difference. So, with this conversation, I'm interested to hear, unique perspectives and how people would feel about that.
So in watching your children grow and watching them grow up into society today, right? What do you have they ever come to you with a perspective about how people may look at them, or like say for instance, your son, mm-hmm. His mother may take him to school one day and she's white. Right. You may take him to school another day. You're black, and do your children ever get into a situation where people question, like, is that your dad or is that your mom? Do people ever do your children deal with that in the world?
No, what's so funny is I just had lunch with my son the other day, and a bunch of his friends ran up to me and was like, "You're Jordan's daddy, right?" And I was like, yeah. And, they're all giving me hugs and saying, "Oh, Jordan's cool, you're cool." That hasn't happened, but I'll give another perspective. So, my son's mom has a older daughter who's also mixed, and you can definitely tell she's really, really mixed. And
can you explain that? What does that mean?
Yeah, so with my kids, they're
they look African American.
They look African American. With her daughter, they look more on the whiter side, except for the hair. Her hair is definitely black hair. We'll call it that. It's black. It's some black hair.
Right.
So she has mentioned that she had some issues on the bus about that, and that situation. But for my kids, and also I think it's also, we can go into the single parent conversation and me being involved as a parent, because I'm always there. Mm-hmm. So, you see me with my kids. You saw me when I came to school registration with my kids. The doctors see me. So there's no mistaking the fact, oh, that's their dad, because he's always there. In the other situation with her daughter, her dad was not in the picture at all, and I actually played that role for her dad. So there's more of a, hey, like, we only see one parent, and your parent looks like this, but you look like that.
Right.
So with that situation, yeah. But with my daughter, no. There's my daughter and my son, it's, that's your dad. So there's none of that there.
And why do you think that in the other instance that is different? Why do you feel like it's different? If is it because of the texture of her hair, or is it because of the appearance of she looking African American, or she look more white, and you really can't tell her nationality, and then you show up as representative of a dad, and they looking at you like, okay, well, this possibly could be her father because the texture of her hair, color of her skin. But then when her mom shows up, the questions might pop up.
Yeah, I think it may be more of a, because it's not, I wasn't always there. I came into the picture later. So okay. She's always been with her mom. So her mom was taking her places. And there was no other father figure there. So you're thinking, her mom is a blonde-headed girl. And you're thinking, okay, well, this is, not a blonde-headed little girl. Right. But so I think that might be part of it. But like I said, when I was around, it was like, oh, yeah, that's your dad,
Yeah, because, I even like you brought up even being down here in the South.
Right.
And when you look into it, today's generation and how people operate in today's world, you see more interracial couples. Right. You see more, it's just like when you go into the school system, your children kind of, I would say, doesn't view or look at other children as, oh, he's Asian, right, or he's Mexican, or they just look at that's my friend,
right?
And I think from the humanistic standpoint, we as adults get involved in that more than the children. And I think that sometimes the world is evolving to the point that the racist part is leaving. Right. It's always going to be there, but I think that so much that we are adapting to the point that, hey, my son or my daughter may bring, their best friend might be a little Mexican kid, right, or their best friend might be a little Asian kid.
Right.
And you have to make that adjustment. And then even with that, can that other child's parent make that adjustment that, hey, you know what? This is a black man that I'm letting my children go to their house,
right,
because culturally, sometimes we do things a lot different.
Right.
So when you're dealing with your children, and like you said, they have friends that's all different nationalities, right? How does that look to the other parents to you? When your son might say, hey, Dad, can, Keith come and hang out with us?
Right.
How do you, as a parent, see other parents receive that?
Right. So I'll go back to what you had said. I think as, we're in 2024, so as we've gone through a generations of people who have gone through, a racist past, but now we're in 2024. I think things have changed for the better. I don't see anybody, my kids go over their friends' houses all the time, and there's never been who is that or what is that? No, there's, they're children, and they're always been accepted as children. I think that's the greatest thing about our society today. Obviously racism will always exist in our country and our society itself, but in terms of have things gotten better? Yeah. And then, like I said, at the end of the day, these are still kids,
Right.
Yeah, so that whole situation.
So we have Brother Mustafa that just joined us, and Brother Mustafa is a single parent as well with two daughters. And, our conversation today is, do you feel like your kids, being with interracial relationships going on and parents with interracial kids, and how does children adapt to that, or what does it look like to them from your perspective?
Well, being, how do we say, I would say, being a practicing Muslim for most of my life is something in actuality that we promote that intercultural, interracial, but not interreligious, excuse me, because we believe that we created women's rights 1,500 years ago. So when children see that there's a balance between men and women, young and old, there's no ageism. But when it comes to, as far as like the society, one thing I don't shield from them is the reality of society, that America has an ugly, ugly past, an ugly truth. And because the way that they disseminate it is they're trying to wash that up under the rug. And you're removing decades and decades of pseudosciences, phrenology. Another one that was practiced, which is eugenics, which is a castration of one race for the preservation of another. And lastly is because that this is something that is highly, highly forbidden, is racial supremacy of one over another. It was Prophet Muhammad's last sermon. So in English it says, the Creator is speaking to everybody. "O you mankind, I have created you of many different tribes and nations and colors and languages in order that you may know each other, to interact, to see that you're all one. Not that you should hate each other. And only the best of you with me is the one that is the most God-fearing."
So how do you get your children to interact with other nationalities, like we was just talking with Andrew? He's a father that raised biracial children, and like I said, sometimes your child friend in today's society might be a little Mexican kid, might be a little Asian kid. How do you, as a parent, welcome them in? I mean, if you hold on to the past of, like you say, of what they're trying to hide or brush to the side, if you live in that past, how do you embrace what's going on in today's society of children embracing one another?
So they one of her childhood friends from her previous school. She was at the other middle school. She's biracial. The mother is what we call Euro-American. She's white and father's black. And she's from Louisiana. And when they first entered the school and they see them covered up, they thought that my children were Indian or whatever, because that's primarily what they see in this area here in Gwinnett County, Georgia. But what me and my friends discussed is that their own people, their own contemporaries, treat them worse than the children it's like the children who look like them treat them worse than the children that's different from them. The children that's different from them, that are biracial, that are white, that are Asian, it's really more of a class thing. One young lady, she's Asian, and she was peachy rich. They own a couple of Chinese restaurants. She said that the incoming kids, or she's a senior, the incoming kids, the freshmen, whatever, are worse than the kids that's leaving out of school. So you see what's going on. It's really about the parenting in the household. So it's not really a color thing with them. Really, it's about a cultural class. Right? Some kids think they're better than other kids because they have more, or the others have less, or also if their parents are able to give them certain luxuries or whatever. Okay,
so let's go back to you, Andrew, because something he just brought up. I just want to see if we can address that. So when you talk about culture, and when you're in a interracial relationship with and have interracial children, society as a whole, mostly will say if it's a black father, they consider the children black. And when we as a people, as black people, and we're addressing culture, what culture do it becomes the domineering culture? Do you teach them more of the black culture because you know that once they go out into the world, that's what they're going to have to address, or do you teach them more of the white culture? Because not you say per se as a parent saying choose one or the other. Society makes them choose. So when you're raising your children, how do you, or what perspective do you get them to look at?
Yeah, so, first things first. So I teach my children, what my parents taught me, which is essentially no one can define you but yourself, right? So as I told you about my background, I'm from a very diverse background. White, black, Filipino, Spanish, that's all in my family. So, being around different cultures, I've understood that I am who I am, right? So when I raise my kids, I give them the experience that I had, that my parents had. So they understand about, my daughter's 14 and then my son just turned 9 years old. So they understand about the terrible past that our country has had. They understand about what it was like for my great-grandmother, their great-great-grandmother, to live in, a place where she wasn't allowed to be. So we teach our kids they are who they are. They're have black culture, their parents, their mother has a culture, and that's her culture. But overall, it's not about this, hey, society tells you you're this, society tells you you're that.
But that's a realistic situation, because, like, I know one time you and I were having a conversation,
right?
And our conversation was, especially around the George Floyd era,
right,
was, hey, if your son is out there,
right,
and the police are dealing with your son, you make your son aware that, hey, they look at you
right,
as a black man.
Right.
So when you sit here and say, hey, I raised them this way and it doesn't matter what society dictates to us how I'm going to get treated. Now, I totally get what you're saying. Hey, I'm going to raise my children this way.
Right.
But society dictates how, when I'm outside of that door of where we live at, right, society dictates how I'm going to get treated. So, I've heard people with biracial children say, hey, son, you're a black man.
Right.
I mean, I'm not taking nothing away from your mom and this, but you're a black man.
Right.
And that's how society is going to look at
right,
you. So, when you look at the difference, and when you say culturally raised around things, we talking about being biological, and then people that's being, because I chose to marry this Philippine woman, or I chose to marry that white woman or that Asian woman. So they only part of the family because I brought them in and I choose to marry them. So that's where I'm going to, like, okay, like Mustafa, he's Muslim, right?
Right.
So he raised his children in a Muslim type atmosphere.
Right.
But, like he said, when they step outside that door and people see them wrapped up and all that's going on in the world, if they were older, people looking at them as, hey, the bombers and stuff like that. That's the way. Now, he could be a great dad, instilling great things into his children, but again, as a parent, we have to get our children to understand, hey, this is the way mom and dad feel. We're going to love you, this and that, but the world might not love you.
Right. In the conversation, and I'll go into that. So, yeah, I tell, my daughter, tell my son, he's a little younger, but, society will see you as that, and you got to be careful. But, that doesn't change the fact that you are who you are. You are this person who comes from this great family that comes from two different cultures, two different, thought processes. But at the end of the day, society says, hey, you're a black man, so you'll be treated that way. But again, just like, my parents told me as a black man, society will see you a certain way. I'll give you a perfect example. When I was younger, when I was like 13, I used, just like everybody else, I wore baggy pants and backwards hat, and I had a do-rag on, and my grandma was like, "Why are you dressing like that?" And I was like, "That's my culture. My culture is sagging pants and all that." And my grandma said to me, "You weren't raised like that. You were raised to be a very educated, very proper young man. So why are you letting society tell you what culture you need, what you need to dress like, what you need to be like? And, you know, that conversation really held true to me because, yeah, you know, my kids will be seen, you know, black by society itself, but in this household, you are Jordan. You know, you are from a black father, a white mother. You know, we're a Christian family. We're a family that holds true to, you know, the values that we hold true. So society can't change who you are inside. They can tell you, and if you let society tell you who you are, I think that's a problem in itself.
I think sometimes society, because of anger and frustration, can change your dynamics of how you think as a human being.
Okay.
I just know that, you know, some things are a choice of a person,
right.
And I get that because, you know, it's just like you just said, like, okay, your grandmother said, you know, we didn't raise you like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? But once I get some age to me, because like you said, you were 13, you're influenced by your friends, right, and things of that nature. So then you begin to look at the world differently. You begin to look at, well, grandma don't know what she's talking about and everything like that. You know what I mean? We all go through it.
Right.
You know, no matter what quality of we live of life or what person raised us, whether it was right, grandma, granddad, mom, dad, uncle, aunt, we get to that point at some point in time in life that I know it. I know it all. I know this. I know. Well, you know what? That's the way y'all did things. This is the way I'm doing things. So, Brother Mustafa, you wanted to say something when I was talking about the culture?
Look, at the day was our day, or one of our days of commemorate the end of Ramadan, and the brother that gave the sermon said that in recent time, and I know their experience because this is predominantly a Indian community, right? And he said that racism or the bias and violence, religious violence, they call it religious violence. It was something new to me. He said religious violence against Muslims has increased 700%. And the thing is about with my children, I have girls and they're females, but when they step out, they're more visible than I am. So what kind of amazed me was that they're very adept at defending themselves and defending their religion, all right, and explaining and extrapolating, especially against the other ones who want to hide behind a facade, right, and switch things up. Our children are very unabashed about explaining that, right? They're very brave because it seems like their own ilk is sometimes your greatest enemy is your own people. Mm-hmm. And the way they explained it, because they understand the difference between cultural racism and institutional racism, right? And when they get challenged, and they've come to me and said, "Daddy, they said this," or "Daddy, they said that," and I said, "Well, what do you do to say?" Well, sometimes I don't even have to ask them; they go right into it. And being that they're very intelligent young ladies, you know, I'm very proud of them. But I ain't saying anything; just you don't get a gold star for that. But the way that they're able to defend their religion, and the way they're able to extrapolate it and then expound it, lets me know that they're following the right path, because that's the true Islam, is that we preach it, we learn it, and then if anybody tries to attack it, that we defend it. Right. It's three-pronged. And that's how Islam spread around the world, because a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, religion, you know, it's a religion of peace. No, that's not true. Islam is a religion of justice. We establish what is called equity, even against our own selves, because, like I said before, in this society, you have institutional racism, and you have cultural racism. Certain things and norms are just accepted, right? Where a white woman can call the police on you like it's nothing, just for you just looking the wrong way, watching birds, whatever. And some people have petitioned and campaigned to say, listen, if you call the police on a person of color, especially a black person, and also remember that white and black are not colors, they're political, those are political references, right? If you call the police with the intention and know in this age space that what's going to happen, that's assault. And then you know that this person is going to eventually be killed, maimed, or mutilated and incarcerated. To me, that's malice with forethought. That's a capital crime to me.
Right.
You know what's going to happen to this person. So you're using the police as a weapon.
Right.
George Floyd. They had an interaction.
Right.
I'm not surprised why that person, Darden, was not charged with first-degree murder, because he had and the person that called the police was an addict and he was a Muslim.
Right.
Ooh.
So in saying that, in dealing with you as a single parent with biracial children, you as a single person with Islamic daughters, how do we come together and bring people together to understand culture, religion, and how do we raise our children to understand that?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna answer first, right? Because we are all grown here, right? You know, like I said, I kind of related to that because when I first walked in the house, and my father grew up in the projects in New York. Right. All that hat back, whatever. He said, listen, the only real true criminals, the real gangsters, is either dead or locked up.
Right.
And not the fact that they come in, it's the fact that why do y'all glorify the projects?
Right.
Another word for projects is an experiment. And what I'm saying is the fact that what is missing today, and a friend that not really a friend.
Right.
I'm gonna say that because of this person who was really a wolf in sheep's clothing. Righteousness does not exist. Wanting to, what we say in Arabic, khayr, is wanting good for the next human being. Where you remove something out of their way, you help an elderly person cross the street or with the groceries. Everybody, it seems like today, everybody is. I got my own radio show, WIFN. What's in it for me? They'll run you over. I mean, they'll leave.
But Mustafa, get back to how we raise these children.
Really,
how we get the children.
You change the world one person at a time, and that person is the man in the mirror. If you really take a self-account, it says in the Quran to take personal account. And the reason why we don't take personal account is we're all addicted to the most prevalent drug, most dangerous drug ever known to man, attention. Everybody is me. And when these kids are like that, the algorithm is built in these phones and all the internet is for the young teenage mind.
So do we take these phones and things
away from them? No. Remember that my friend that had attended earlier, she had went to an event when she was earlier. Come from a well-to-do family. You know, they all right. They live up the street. She grew up here.
Right.
2-parent income, both parents educated. So, not to delve too deep into her personal whatever, but she advised, she said, Mustafa, keep these children, these young girls, involved in so many activities, they're not going to have time to get involved with drugs and alcohol.
So that's basically
spend more time.
That's basically keeping a lot of the social media and phones away.
Yes.
Well, so that's what I'm asking.
Yes. Well, but the part is the fact that it's not really about the phones and everything. Because think about that fight that happened between the girls at the SEC championship. How many people was in the crowd filming that?
Yeah, but that's still, it goes back to a phone.
It goes back to
because
parenting.
No, listen.
Spend time.
So
with
if
your
it
family.
go back to the phone and you're filming it. Yes. And then you put it out there on social media,
attention,
right?
For attention.
So it's like if it's not out there, you don't have nothing to look at. So I mean, I just think part of probably raising children in today's society is to take some of this and put or restrict it to a certain amount of time. Because it's just like I know even dealing with my children when they were younger. If my son got a friend that got a phone and he don't have a phone, you know what I mean? He's still gonna show him something he probably ain't got no business seeing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or if you say, hey, my children aren't gonna have phones until they get 13 or until they become a sophomore in high school or whatever. You know what I mean? So the only way that you get to use this gadget is at home. When I can, and this go back to parenting, monitor what they on or what they're looking at.
So let me step in for a second because I want to answer your initial question, but to go into the technology thing too. So I'm gonna take what Mustafa was saying and I'm gonna expound upon that. Right. So the point, and we'll go back to the story with my grandmother. The point of that story was something that I was told when I was 5 years old. I was asked, I was 7. I was in the first grade. And I had gotten in trouble at school. I was just, playing around, with my friends. And, my aunt and my grandmother were there. They picked me up from school that day. And my aunt asked me a question. And she said, are you a follower or are you a leader?
Right.
And I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but she was like, if you're a leader, you don't follow other people. You make your own path. You know what's right from wrong. We taught you, your mom, me, your grandmother, we all taught you what was right from wrong. So be a leader and do what's right and what's wrong. So, in society today, to answer your question about how do we, change society, how we start with our kids, the thing I tell my kids, are you a follower or are you a leader? And a lot of people in society today are followers. They follow. Like we can take this into a political conversation, and there's a lot of people that follow a certain candidate because that's the cool thing to do, or he's saying things that people want to hear but they're afraid to say it. But if you're a leader, you know what's right and what's wrong.
Well, let me ask you this question. Yeah. Being that when your grandparent said, are you a follower or are you a leader? And you stated that I didn't know what that meant at that time.
Right.
So when you tell your children that, are you a follower or a leader, do you expand on to get them to understand it? Because because the age you said you were, your son is almost that age now.
He's 9, so he's
no. That's what I mean. I understand that. I'm saying he's around that. I'm not saying he's 7 or 8 or 9. But what I'm saying is that do you expand to him what that really means so he can understand it? Because like you say, when you was around that age, when somebody said it to you, you really didn't know what it. Like, I ain't got a clue what you're talking about.
And it was explained to me, and I explained it to him. I tell him, whether you're 7, 8, 9, you were brought up a certain way. You know how to act right. You know what's right and what's wrong. So on and so forth, right? Like, when you see a kid in a restaurant running around acting a fool, my kids never done that. They know better. You sit, you eat your food, you don't throw food, you don't do whatever. So, part of that is knowing, hey, I know my dad wouldn't want me to do that, or my parents wouldn't want me to do that, so why am I going to do something that someone else does?
Right. Like, I'm an old school parent, right? And you bring up, because I've seen that. Children running wild in the mall, sitting in restaurants and running back and forth and of that nature. But then you have these parents that are saying, hey, I'm letting them be them. I'm giving them free will.
Right.
But to me, where is the lesson of discipline? You know what I mean? Right. And I think that these children grow up to be undisciplined, because if you're giving them the free will that, hey, I've seen people take their children to people's houses and the children start running around in the people's house and jumping on the furniture and all that. Right. And the parents is just sitting there like not saying nothing. Right. And then some parents get bent out of shape when you say something to their children because they feel like, hey, let them be them. Right. Let them be them. And I guess being an old school parent, I don't get that.
Right.
I don't get that.
I'm not an old school parent. I'm a new school parent, and I don't get that either. I don't do that.
Well, I'll speak on it directly. One of my children first came to stay with me when I got custody. And one of the hardest things in the world, not worse, one of the hardest things in the world is trying to regain the trust of a young teenage girl. Because I was saying that, you obviously have an issue with me, right? I said, okay, let's sit down, right? I mastered. I tried to do my best to practice and master negotiations. So I said, okay. So her main issue was that I divorced her mother. I said, okay, that had anything to do with you. I divorced your mother. I didn't divorce you. And she said that you only care about yourself and you put your affairs or your matters ahead of us. I said, okay, I know exactly where they're coming from. That's coming from her mother. And then on top of that, I said, now, let's look at the manipulation. You was really ear hustling. You wasn't in that conversation. It had nothing to do with you. Because he said one day, clearing downstairs. And the thing is about my children and young girls, they are extremely sneaky. They are duplicitous. They are two-faced. So it's coming out already. So one day I caught her doing something she wasn't supposed to be doing. And she said to me that, well, Daddy, Mom said that, she wants us to enjoy our childhood and be able to do whatever we want to do. Time out. First of all, I call bull. Why you going to lie on your mother like that? I know your mother. Because, one thing I do say about this lady, she's extremely overprotective. She is a mama bear. I never had to worry about the safety of my children. She from Northwest D.C. She going to go down on you, but over her kids. But when I said that, I said, no. That is a class typical of trying to play two parents against each other. I did it. You did it. Everybody here did it. Did you ask your mom? Yes, Dad.
No, I didn't do it. Remember, I told you I'm old school. I'm old school. That didn't happen in my era.
Yeah, that didn't work. But I said, how you gonna lie on your mama like that, right?
That didn't work in my era.
But Daddy wasn't home. You know what I'm saying? Because he'd be like, if he was home, I'd be like, yeah, whatever your mom said. But she tried to say that when she said, well, Mommy just want us to enjoy our childhood and be able to do what you want to do. I looked at her like Bill Cosby, that's the biggest load of crap I ever had, right? Like when Theo tried to say, I just want to be regular people, Dad. I was like, hey, get out of here, man. Ain't nobody, why you lying on your mama like that, right? I know she didn't say that. And much when I called, she yelling at y'all in the house, do this, do that. Then I tell you, and I would tell her, quit screaming at the children, because I remember Des Bryant was remonstrating the fact that when you yell at the children and we think that's old school parenting, yelling and cursing at them, and after a while that doesn't work. Right. When you yell at them, whatever, and then as soon as they wake up, they got to go through the whole rest of that day with that negativity. And this man done played a star, future Hall of Fame Pro Bowler for, number 88 for the Dallas Cowboys. This dude's tough, and he's from Texas, but he had one of them old school mothers that made him tough. He filed assault charges on his mom.
That's just like me. I say I'm old school. My parents.
But your daughter not filing assault charges.
People used to say, ask my mother, what did you get out of beating those children? She said nothing, but it sure make them listen.
That's old school right there.
That's old school.
You gonna listen to the hard head, make it soft behind.
So, in today's program, man, you get different perspective of whether you have biracial children, whether you're raising daughters of a different culture. Yeah. We also talked about how rough the world could be on them. No matter how great of a parent you are, the world could be really rough on them and make your job even harder. Because they come home to you and question things that society has thrown out there, and it's kind of like you say, you kind of got to break that curse, because of what society then thrown out there, society feeding them, or what the school system is feeding them, or what their best friend is feeding them, because, you can send your children to someone's house and they run their house totally different than you, and then they'll come back home and try that stuff in your house, and there's a major problem.
Well, I'll tell you this directly. This is like my children. One thing I wanted to remove, I don't like using the word generation. I say age space. And a well-known activist that's present today, we shielded our children from stuff so much that we forgot to give them the one thing that's most important, which is the truth. Unabashed, giving them the hard nose. Right. This is what it is. This was out there. One time, my younger daughter came to me and she said, Dad, can I ask you a question? Sure. Shoot. She said, would you disown me if I became gay, if I became lesbian? I said, no. Why would I disown you? You're mine. I would try to do my best to have some patience with you and to discuss reason why you're going there. Because really, most of the time, they're being influenced by their friends in society, and that's the generational curse. Are you making this decision, or is it just an accepted norm? But when she said that, she said, because Mommy said, all right, listen, you're at the age to kind of disseminate between mommy, daddy, society, whatever, all that, whatever, right? When you go to the bank or you go to jail or when you're in the church, ain't nobody there but you and the Lord, okay? So make your own decisions. I don't like when people say WW. Listen, it took me 50 years to get my father out of my head. But she said, Mommy said that she would disown me if I became gay and lesbian. That's really ineffective. It's still your child. Right? But then you think about it. What statistics is in my mind? the statistic is that the highest percentage of domestic violence is amongst lesbian relationships and marriages. Not interracial, not intercultural, right? And I actually seen it was a customer client came to me for a consultation, and she got into domestic violence where her girlfriend, her living roommate, shot at her. They had to go to Gwinnett County jail. So I'm asking, I'm trying to handle this with kid gloves.
Yeah.
Are you so your roommate, girlfriend, are you Dave Chappelle, you down with the Rainbow Coalition? She said, "Oh, why you had to go there?" I'm just asking. You asking me about a shooting. I think one is a little bit more important than the other of trying to figure out your pronoun, whatever, because when you're dead, you just dead. Ain't a pronoun when you're dead.
Right.
But she had got into this domestic violence because you're dealing with two genders, and their physiology is when their emotions run high, they're going to make some erratic decisions, and women are going to protect themselves immediately. Right? They're going to grab something, or they're going to run out somewhere. Men, we're kind of either that fight or flight instinct, we're going to stay in our ground. So I'm more concerned about her safety in a certain space. I'm all about space, because I don't want to be like, well, once upon a time, long, the galaxy far, far away. Right. That's where it's going to be when I'm coming to rescue.
Right.
I'm not Han Solo. We're not going to go warp speed. You got to think right then and there. And when she said that, it's not all about what mommy said, because outside of the house and outside of mommy, the world don't really care. Right. Mm-hmm. They might see you as just a black girl. They might see you. What's that girl that got locked up in Texas? Miss Bland.
Sandra Bland. Yeah.
They don't really care. They didn't care if she was gay. They didn't care if she was rich. What her FICO score was. She ended up dead. Right. Because that was a black woman in a small little town in Texas. They looked at her like she was a troublemaker.
Right.
It was a wrap.
So we just want to thank our guests today. Andrew, Mustafa. We hope that you guys keep listening, and you can reach out to us at peoplethinkaboutit.com. You can you can reach out to us at peoplethinkaboutit@gmail.com. You can go to our pod page, fill out the guest roster, and become a guest on the show, and have some good conversation. So once again, we want to thank you guys for listening to People Think About It. We hope that keep being educational to you. Keep listening. Go to peoplethinkaboutit.com. You can reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So we want to thank you guys for listening.
You've been listening to People Think About It. Be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your friends so that you never miss an episode. I have a question. A new episode drops every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Thank you for listening.
So,